Good morning to everyone. Good morning to everyone. So we'll start today's session. Yesterday there were some problems in between for the audio and the video. So in case there is a problem during the session on video or audio, if you are not able to see the PPT, if PPT is not moving. So if you find such problems, please immediately send me a message at 98471 or just call me at this number. So I am keeping my phone today. I do not make it silent, so we can fix it immediately. Otherwise, yesterday I watched the video, my videos. Yesterday I could see that there were problems, right? So that's why you are not responding to Slido also. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, we'll start today's session. Today I'm going to cover mainly two topics: cost of software estimation and pricing, and configuration management. So software estimation pricing is a lengthy topic which may span towards to the afternoon session also. After that, I will take configuration management. So the software estimation, I used to take a workshop for the industry, software industry, 2 days. It is a 2 days workshop. So here I am trying to give only the important techniques, only two techniques. One is function point and another one is COCOMO. There are a lot of techniques in software estimation. So all those techniques together, it takes around 2 days for the entire workshop. But here I'll be just giving you as teachers, you need not go to that detail. You need to just understand the concept and teach students. That's it. So I will just condense the topic based on your need as a teacher, right? So software estimation. So this session will help you to understand the importance of software estimation, understand the basic concepts of software estimation techniques. The concepts are same. All the techniques works on the same concept, only in certain things, how they visualize the application differs one technique to the other technique, but all the techniques is based on the approach called divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. That's the approach followed in software estimation, because software estimation is a complex activity. So whenever you have to solve a complex problem, we divide and try to solve the individual parts, right? So that's the approach followed in all the techniques. But how each technique divide the software varies from one technique to the other technique. That's the real difference. Otherwise, it's all splitting the application or software into multiple pieces, individually estimate all the parts together, and then add them together. That's how it is done normally, right? But dividing could be different for different techniques. How to divide? That's only a difference. And there are first thing is we need to estimate the size of the software, meaning volume of the requirement. Size of the software is nothing but volume of the requirement has to be estimated first. Then size has to be converted into effort in person days or person hours or person months, and then we can calculate the schedule of the project if you know the team size. That's how the estimation, these are the steps in the estimation. Then once you have the effort, you can convert that to price or cost of the project. So I will cover two techniques. One is function point at a high level, not detail. Detail is very complex. Complex means there are a lot of details when you go to a detailed function point. So I will just talk about the high level approach in function point. And then we go to COCOMO, which is the most focused topic in your syllabus. As per your syllabus, as per the reference book, COCOMO is given more importance, and complete details of COCOMO 2.0 is there in the textbook. So I'm going to cover COCOMO 2.0, which is based on COCOMO 81, the first version. So we need to understand the 81 at a high level, then I will go to COCOMO 2.0 in detail. That's how I am planning to take this session. Right, software estimation is an important activity. If you remember the Standish Group Harrow's report, and they have listed various reasons for software failure. So if you look at the reason, you can find that the majority of one of the most important reason for failure is lack of proper estimation and planning. For planning the project, you need estimation first. Estimation is an input for planning. So if you don't estimate, or if your estimate is not correct, that is going to have an impact on planning. Plan will not be correct if your estimation is not correct. So which will result in estimating a wrong figure for the effort and the schedule. And when you actually do it, that figure, actual effort and actual schedule they vary from the estimated figure and the estimated effort and the estimated schedule. So which is nothing but a software failure. If you cannot meet, if you cannot complete the project as per the estimated schedule, then it is treated as a failure, right? So if your estimation is wrong, definitely the actual will vary from the estimation, and that will be treated as a failure of your project. So that is one of the main reasons for software failure. So we have seen 70% of the software projects fail across the globe, average right now, right? 69% to be exact. Out of that 69%, one third, that is 33%, would be because of not 33%, 23% could be because of problems with estimation. One third of that could be because of lack of proper estimation or inaccuracy in the estimation. So that's what we are going to improve. If you have a better estimation technique, we'll be able to increase the success rate by 23% or 20 plus percent, right? That's the importance of software estimation. And this happens in many projects. Many projects fail because of lack of proper estimation. But at the end of the project, they analyze the reason for the failure, and they will attribute the failure to something else like lack of proper resources, or resources were not skilled enough to do the project, insufficient number of resources. All these will be attributed as the failure. But in fact, the failure could be because of wrong estimation, but that they will not realize. Without realizing that, they will attribute the failure to somebody else, mainly the team, right? That's what happens, which is not right. And many companies, what they do is like they do the estimation based on a technique called expert judgment. Expert judgment. Expert judgment means they once they get a requirement from the customer, requirement will be at a high level only, because initially you will get a mail from the customer asking for, they will say, we like to have a software with so and so features, where they will say 5 bullet points. These are the features we need in the software. Can you please give us a proposal and tell us how much it will cost and how long it is going to take? That's the mail you get from the customer. So from these 5 bullet point requirements, you need to estimate and give a proposal. And the proposal, you need to tell how much it is going to cost, how many dollars it will cost for the customer, and when are you going to deliver, the timeline, the 3 months or 2 months or 6 months. So that has to be done. So in order to do that, you need to estimate. So for estimation, what they do is like they forward this mail to a senior software engineer and ask him to estimate, right? So the senior software engineer, what he does is he estimates based on his previous experience, based on some other project he did before. He just think about how this functionality, it may take 5 days, took 5 days. Second functionality, he will think about something he did before, and he will say 3 days. So he just put some figures against each of the 5 requirements and add them together and give it back to the project manager, saying this is the estimate, right? And which is the most inaccurate way of doing the estimation. This is the most unrealistic way of doing the estimation. You will get the biggest, there will be big variation. That figure will be totally unrealistic, right? And this is the total inefficient way of doing the estimation. That's what most people do, most companies do, which is called expert judgment, right? And some companies, what they do is they say, if you ask them, what's your estimation technique, they will say WBS based estimation. They will say WBS based estimation. We have seen what is WBS. WBS is decomposing the major deliverables into small deliverables, right? So they decompose all the total functionality into small components like screens, report, and the backend programs. All this they will split up and make a list of all these components or work packages in the WBS. That is fine. It's perfect. There is no problem with that. But the next step, what they do is the problem. So after that, what they do is the engineer who is doing this will put the figure against each item, again based on his experience. Again, based on his experience, he put the figure against each of the components. Each screen they will put the figures, and report they will put figures based on his experience again. So finally, it is nothing but again expert judgment. Only the decomposition was done based on the WBS approach, but the figures were put based on still expert judgment, and that figure will also be not correct, inaccurate. So that's what happens, which results in a software project area. So if we can have a process and skill for doing estimation in the right way using standard techniques, that will result in improving the success rate of software project. So that's the importance of software estimation. We are going to see two standard techniques for software estimation. And many companies do not have the skill. Nobody knows how to do the function point estimation. Nobody knows COCOMO. So they can only depend on this expert judgment, right? So that's the problem. So many companies don't give that focus to estimation, improving the skill in the estimation. All right, with that introduction, we are moving. So I'm giving you an exercise. So here you can see a screen. Can you see the screen number, slide number 4? Slide number 4, can you see, are you seeing slide number 4? Prafulla, can you unmute and tell, are you seeing slide number 4? Anyone?
It's visible.
Okay. So this is a small exercise you have to do, take a paper and pen. So this is a small screen for adding the details of a new customer. Adding the details of a new customer. There are 8 fields: customer, name, contact number, alternate contact number, billing address, phone, another mobile phone number, fax number, alternate phone number, shipping address, and the type of the customer. This is what the screen is. So there are 4, 8, 9 fields are there, right? 2, 4, 8, and 9 fields. And when you press the OK button, all these details will be saved to a database table. All these fields will be saved to a database table, right? So this is the functionality you need to develop. Assume that tables are already there. So you need to save this information to the table. That's it. So you need to develop the screen with GUI. So based on your understanding or experience in doing some programming before, you can assume any language. It could be C++ or Visual Basic or Java or PHP, whatever language you are familiar with. You assume that language and estimate how long you are going to take to develop this screen fully, completely, a perfect screen. So once I give you that much time, you should be able to develop it, test it, and make it error-free and give it to me within that time frame. Suppose you say, I am going to take 5 days. So once you get 5 days and the screen design, you should be able to complete that screen without any problem, without any bug, and deliver me within 5 days. So you need to tell me how long you will take in hours or days to complete this functionality. Just do that estimation. And you can enter the answer in the Slido. I will put the Slido. You can put the figure in the Slido and mention the unit in hours or days. Go ahead. I'll give you 3 minutes. Slido is already active. So one more minute, just enter the number in the Slido with a unit in days or hours. Please enter the figure in the Slido. Three minutes already over. Please enter your estimation figure in Slido. I cannot see any figure. Hello. Are you working on it? Responding. Otherwise, we'll be wasting time. If you are not working on it, please tell me. If you are working on it, if you need still some more time, I can give no problem. Otherwise, we'll be wasting our time. I'll give you one more minute, 5 minutes. Now it is 2 minutes, 15 seconds. 1 hour, okay. I got one answer. Okay. Others, please go and type your answer. Please give your answers. I will wait for some more time. I want to know the answers. I assume that you will answer. Otherwise, I'll be just unnecessarily, right? How long you are going to take? Hello, come on. So whatever figure you got, need not think too much. This is a very simple screen, right? Just enter your job. Be even feeling. Or you can calculate, split up the activities and put the figures and add them to the design how much, coding how much.
Sir, we are not able to hear you.
Hello,
Hello,
can you hear
sir.
me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Can you put your figures? Please let me proceed, otherwise we'll be just wasting time. Just put your figures. If you're working on it, if you don't work, please tell me, we can proceed now. It's a very simple exercise. So I could not see any answer yet. Only one answer I got. I don't know whether is it a problem with the Slido or you have not entered it. Or you can put it in the chat. Just put it in the chat. How many hours? How many days? Just put it in the chat if you have problem with Slido. Hello everyone, please cooperate.
There's a problem with the Slido, sir. It's not
Pardon?
Slido.
Slido not working, is it?
I have entered, but it's not showing a send.
So we entered the event code 677115.
Okay, sir. I have sent, but it's not responding. Yeah.
Is that the case with everyone or? Okay. Then you put it in the chat, no problem. Just put the figures in the chat. Just put the figures in the chat. I got 2 figures. Still some more. I got 3 figures. Some more. Okay. Thank you. I got 4 answers. A total around 10 people. 1, 2, 3, 4 answers. Okay, we are just wasting time, so because of that I am proceeding. So the answers I got are like the minimum I got, the lowest figure I got is 1 hour. Lowest figure I got is, so I will show you the result from the Slido. I can show you the chart, you can see that figure. And 1 hour is the minimum figure I got, and 1 day is the biggest figure I got. 1 hour and 1 day. 1 day could be 8 hours, right? So that means 1 hour and 8 hours. What's the difference? 800% difference. 800%. So 1 day is 8 times 1 hour. So is it the right way? Is it the right way? If you give the requirement to 2 people to a person, if he is going to put 1 hour, one person will put 1 hour for this particular thing. Similarly, all the screens you will put figures accordingly. And if you give the same requirement to the second person who has put 1 day, he'll be putting the hours in accordingly, right? 1 day. So there will be 8 times difference between the estimates given by 2 people. So that itself shows that this is not the right way of doing it. So one person, if he says 100% days, the other person will say 800% days. You can imagine the cost difference. 8 times. Cost would be 8 times. And 100% days and 800% days. Cost would be 8 times. Sometimes customer will not give you the project because they will think that it's too much. And sometimes customer will be happy because you got at a very low figure. And they will give you the project, but your company will lose. You will not be able to deliver it. And you will lose money the company will lose on the project. That is what is going to happen. So this is definitely, so you will agree with me that this is not definitely the right way of doing. This is what is called expert judgment. You have done based on your expert experience. This technique is called expert judgment, which is the most unrealistic way of doing the estimation. That's why the importance of formal estimation techniques, right? And why we need a software estimation? There are 4 reasons why we need to go for estimation. One is, as I said, when customer comes to you with a project, you need to give a proposal. So in the proposal, you need to tell how long it is going to take and how much it will cost the customer. So in order to give those 2 figures, you need to estimate. And second reason is, it is the input for project planning. So unless you know how much effort is going to take, you may not be able to decide the team size. You will not be able to provide time for various activities. All these providing time for various activities depends on the total estimation, right? So total estimation is the basic input, and that you will be splitting to various activities to do the activities. That's how you plan. And once you plan, when you do the actual work, you will compare the actual time taken with the planned time and see whether there is a variance. That is what is called project monitoring. So if there is a variance, you say that there is a delay in completing that activity and schedule slippage. So that is what is done in project monitoring and control. So it is also required for project monitoring and control. And for companies who are certified like CMMS certification, ISO certification, having a proper estimation technique, estimation process is a mandatory requirement in both CMMI as well as ISO requirements. So when the auditors come for auditing for the certification, they will ask, what is your process of estimation? And you need to show the proof and tell what's the process, right? Those are the 4 reasons for estimation. And if your estimation is lower, if you underestimate your project, what is going to happen is you will be assigning a small team. You will have only a small number of people assigned based on your underestimation. And finally, you will not be able to complete the project on time, right? That's what is going to happen. And also you will agree for a shorter time frame. When you see that the effort is not that high, you will agree for a short schedule and you will not be able to finally complete within that schedule. And if you overestimate, that is also a problem. If you overestimate, most likely you will not get the project. Customer will not give you the project because there will be other companies who will be quoting lower than you. So project will go to the other companies because you quoted very high. So that is the major reason, major problem. And if you quote high and you get the project, for example, what is going to happen is the project will cost more than actually required. Actually, that much time is not required. But once you estimate a higher figure and give that much time to the team, what is going to happen is they will take the given time, even if it is not required. That is called Parkinson's law, which says that team will occupy the time available. Project will occupy the time available. So you can do a project in 100 days, or say 30 days. The project can be done in 30 days, for example. And if you give 90 days for the same project to a team, they will take 90 days. And you will not see they are idling, they are sitting idle. You will see they are working 90 days and completing the same project, which can be done by a team in 30 days. That is what is called Parkinson's law. If you give more time for the team, they will work relaxed, and the productivity naturally comes down, and they will complete in 90 days whatever time available to them. That's what happens. So that is a big problem. Now, if you estimate in the beginning of the project, when you start the project, the requirements will not be that clear. And you will not have all the details about the project in the beginning period, initial period of your project, right? So, if you estimate, when your estimation, the beginning of the project, like feasibility study, it will be 4 times different than the correct estimate, actual estimate. If X is the actual estimate required, when you estimate in the beginning period, feasibility or proposal stage, that figure you get will be either 4x or minus 0.25x. It will be 4 times less or 4 times higher, right? That's the variation. And as you progress in the project, when you complete your SRS document and the requirements are more clear, at that point, if you do the estimation will be somewhat like plus or minus 2 times, right? It could be 2x or 0.5x, 2 times different, 2 times lesser or 2 times higher. And as you proceed further, when you complete the design, at the end of the design phase, if you re-estimate, figures will be little more accurate. So you may get 100% variation, right? X, instead of that, you will get 1.5x and here 0.25x, for example, right? 0.75x. And after coding, if you complete, the variation will be still coming down, coming narrow. And after delivery, if you re-estimate, that will be the correct estimation. After delivery, you take the actual, that is the correct estimation, you will get X, right? So initially, if you estimate, the variation will be 4 times. So this is called corner of uncertainty. So what companies do is like they will re-estimate at the end of every phase and make adjustments in the project plan. Make adjustments in the project plan based on the re-estimation, so that they can complete the project on time. They may not get additional money even if you re-estimate and find that this effort is more than actually quoted initially. Customer is not going to agree. Customer will give you only the originally agreed price. But at least you can make the customer happy by doing the project correctly and delivering it on time, so that you may get further project from the same customer. So you may have to absorb the overrun, absorb the additional cost, but at least you can complete the project on time if you re-estimate, and based on that you replan your project. That's what is done in the industry normally. Right, now we will talk about what are the steps in software estimation. So there are 4 steps in software estimation. The first step is estimating the size of the software, which is like estimating the volume of requirements, size of the requirements. What is the volume of work with respect to the requirements? That is what is done in the size estimation. I will give an example. Suppose you want to construct your house, right? You go to the civil engineer and tell your requirements. You tell him that I need a house with 3 bedrooms and 3 attached bathrooms, one hall and drawing dining hall, and I need a kitchen, and I need a store, and a work area, and a sit out, for example. Right? You tell your requirements. You are a civil engineer. 3 bedrooms, hall, kitchen, and work area, and store, for example. You tell the requirements to the civil engineer. Immediately after that, he will calculate. He will put standard sizes. There are standard sizes for the bedroom and the hall and the kitchen and all that. So he will put all standard sizes and add them together and tell you it will be approximately 1,500 square feet. So your house will be approximately 1,500 square feet. So he has estimated the size of your house. Estimate the size of your house. And after that, he will say, so based on the current construction cost of 3,000 rupees per square feet, it would be approximately 45 lakhs. The cost of the house will be approximately 45 lakhs. So he has converted size to cost. So that is for you to take a decision whether to go ahead with construction or not. So now you've got an idea, high level idea, how much it is going to cost, what's the size of your building. Suppose you give him the project, he will do a detailed estimation. So he will calculate how many bricks will be required, how many sacks of cement will be required, how many tons of steel will be required, what's the labor for each of the work. All this he will calculate and give you exactly how much it is going to cost you. Exactly. Initial figure was just ballpark estimation, right? That's how the civil engineer does. Similarly, so he has first calculated the size of your house. Software also, the first thing is estimate the size of your house. There are different size measures. Lines of code. Lines of code is a one size measure. You can actually count the number of lines of code in your program. Software is nothing but a list of programs, right? So just count the number of lines of code. That is the size of your project. life of your project. But the problem with the lines of code is, lines of code you can count only after completing programming, right? So at this time of proposal, you don't have the code. You have to give the figure before even starting the project. So lines of code is not a practical size measure. It can be done at the end of the project, but not before. It is not possible. Fourth, because of that, people are come up with lot of logical size measures, and a function point is one of them. There is another one, use case point, right? And there are many. Function point is one of the popular one. That's the oldest technique. So we are going to see that technique. So once you have the size in function point or lines of code, you can convert this size into effort in number of person months or person days or person hours. Right? How many persons have to work for how many months? Right? That figure you can convert, you can get from size. 1% day means one person working for 1 day is called 1% day. Right? 5% days means if only one person is going to work in that project, he will take 5 days. If two people are going to work on that, it will take 2.5 days. Right? So that means 5%. So you need to convert size into effort once you have the size. How do you convert size into effort? So I will just give you a figure. Suppose your lines of code, as I said, it can be computed only at the end, but for the sake of converting size to effort, we will use lines of code. Suppose 1000 lines of code is your total size of the program, 1000 lines of code, right? And in order to calculate how many hours or how many days it is going to take, how do you convert this 1000 lines of code into person days? Can somebody tell? You know the size in lines of code, that is 1000. So how do you convert this 1000 and find out how many days it is going to take? What you need? Unmute and tell. You need one more figure. What is that figure you need? In order to convert size to effort in person days, how do you do that? Suppose I give you another figure, which is called productivity of a developer. Suppose I give you how many lines of code a programmer can develop in a day. If I give you that figure, how many lines of code a programmer can develop in a day, will you be able to calculate this? How many days total it is going to take for completing 1000 lines of code? Will you be able to do that?
It depends on the programming skill of that person's.
Yeah, I'm going to give you that figure. Yeah, I'm going to give you that figure. So I'm going to give you that figure. Whoever is going to do, I'm going to give you the figure how many lines of code he is going to develop in a day. So how do you convert 1000 to total number of days he is going to take? How do you convert that then? So do you have any idea what is the organization, what is the average productivity of a developer in lines of code?
Each day 8 hours, right?
Each day 8 hours. Yes. I'm going to give you the figure. Before that, let me ask you a question. Do you have any idea what's the productivity of a developer in the industry, average productivity? How many lines of code per day? Well, let me ask you directly. How many lines of code you can write in a day? We are all software engineers, right? So software professionals or IT professionals, BTechs and techs. So how many lines of code you can write in a day? Just tell me the figure.
Depends on the coding skill.
Yeah, I am asking individually you. How many lines you can write? 200 lines. Very good. Good. All others, just tell how many lines you can write in a day. How many lines of code you can write in a day? Hundred lines. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Underlines. Anybody else? So it again depends on the programming language. If the lines of code you can write in a day, again depends on the programming language. But industry average, there are figures available in the industry. Average productivity figures are available for all the languages. But you'll be surprised to know that as per the IBM metrics, it is only average 30 lines of code per day, right? Average is 30 lines of code. Different languages may have little bit variations, but average is only 30 lines of code, right? As per IBM. So IBM, if it is 30 lines of code, it will be probably much lesser or sometimes higher, because our local companies may not follow that much process and all, right? Because of that, they may not do all the activities, so they will have little more productivity. So 200 lines of code, what you said is right. You will be able to write 200 lines of code in a day. But what is going to happen is, you will spend probably another 4 or 5 days, 4 days probably, to debug, test and debug and fix the bugs and finally make it perfect. So you will add some new codes, modify some existing code in the 200 lines. So you have written all the code in the first day and you started testing. So during the testing, you will keep on adding some code. You will remove some code, you will modify some code. And this activity will take maybe 3 more days or 4 more days, right? So at the end of the 5th day, you will see that everything is working perfectly. And at that point also, if you measure, it will not be more than, there will not be much difference in the total length of code. It will be around 200. Again, it may be less or it may be a little bit more. 200. Assume that it is again 200. But totally, for completing this 200 lines of code perfectly, you have taken 5 days. So what is the productivity? 40 lines of code per day. Average productivity is then 40 lines of code. That's what happens. So coming back to our problem, 1000 lines of code is your size estimate and 40 lines of code is the productivity. How many days you will take to complete the project? Come on. 25 days. Okay, very good. 25 days. 25 working days. You need 25 working days to complete that 1000 lines of code, provided the average productivity is 14 lines of code per day. Right? Very good. So 25 working days. So that is the effort. That is how you calculate the effort. Similarly, if your size measure is in function point, if you know the productivity figure, how many function point a developer can produce in a day, you will be able to complete, you will be able to convert function points into effort in percentage. So once you have the effort in percentage, so you said 25% it is going to take. And suppose you are going to assign 2 people for doing this project. So they are going to take maybe 12.5 days or 15 days or something like that, right? So divided by 2. So once you know the total effort and once you decide the team size, you will be able to decide the schedule for your project in calendar days or calendar months. So 25% is the total effort, and if you put 2 people together, they will complete in 12.5 days. That's what it says, right? So that way you can compute the schedule and estimate the project cost. So how do you estimate the project cost? Now you know total it is going to take 25%, and you know what is the average rate of a software developer per day. So suppose you are giving him 30,000 rupees per month. Suppose you are giving 30,000 rupees per month. Per day is 1,000 rupees, right? Per day is 1,000 rupees. So 25%, 25 into 1,000, 25,000 rupees it will cost. Right? That's how you calculate the cost of your project. Plus you add profit margin and all that, which we will discuss at the time of pricing. Right? So that is the basic step in software estimation. Now, here we have taken a lot of big assumptions like productivity is constant. Productivity is a constant. That's what assumption we have taken. So as Bibu said, it varies based on various factors. It varies based on the productivity skill set of a developer. It varies based on the size of the team. As the team size increases, average productivity increases or decreases. Average productivity of a person increases or decreases when he works in a team with a lot of people. Just tell me, is it increases or decreases? So we have seen 40 lines of code per day is the productivity of a person. Whether that figure will increase or decrease when he is going to have 5 people in the team. Just tell me. When we divided 1000 by 40, we have taken the assumption that 40 is constant. So which is not correct. That's what I am going to explain right now. So just tell me that 40 lines of code is the productivity of one person. Whether that his productivity is going to increase or decrease when he is going to work in a team of 5 people. That's my question. Yes. Sumit said it decreases. That's the right answer. It will always decrease, it will not increase. Because as the number of team members increases, yesterday we talked about that, communication channels increases. Yesterday we talked about communication channel, number of communication channels with the team size of n is n into n minus 1 by 2. That is, communication channels increases exponentially. Because of that, communication effectiveness decreases as the number of team size increases. Because of that, productivity normally comes down. So productivity doesn't remain constant, right? So as the size increases, size of the project increases, you need to have more people. As the size of the team increases, there are two problems. One is complexity of the project increases, and the team size also, you need a bigger team. Because of these two reasons, complexity will be higher and the team size should be higher. Because of that, productivity will be lower. So as the size increases, productivity normally comes down exponentially. Because of that, this is the graph you can see, right? You can see the graph. So you'll take more time to complete a project as the complexity size increases. This is x-axis is the size. So as size increases, you may need more number of days to complete, right? It increases exponentially. So here, when we divided this size by productivity, we assume that it is linear. This graph is linear, which is not correct. The graph is not linear. As the size increases, it may be linear up to this point. So it may be linear for a small project. Up to this point, it can be treated as linear, right? Or maybe up to this point. After that, it just increases exponentially. For a small project, you can use that division, no problem. You will get more or less accurate figures. But for a big project, you cannot use this formula just by dividing size by productivity. That will not work. That is where we are going to have COCOMO model, right? That is where we are going to have the COCOMO model. So which will take size in lines of code or function point and convert that size in function point or LOC to person months. So that is what we are going to see now. That is what is included in your syllabus. FP, I have seen the textbook. FP is not really mentioned in the chapter, which is given in the syllabus. So FP is already there in the slide. I will share the slide, which will take a little more time. So I'm going to COCOMO first and explain the COCOMO because that is what is included in the syllabus. I'll explain COCOMO, then come back and talk about FP if time permits. There one more graph I need to explain before going to COCOMO. Now I want to explain one more concept. So take the previous case. You said 1000 lines of code, 40 lines of code per day. It is going to take 25 days for one person. And if you increase the team size, if you have 2 people, they will be able to complete in 12.5 days. Suppose I put 5 people. How many days it will take to complete? 5 people. How many days you need to complete it? Come on. I'm going to have a team of 5 people and total effort is 25%. How many days it will take to complete? Hello, come on. Am I with you? Can you hear me? 5 days. Thank you. Thank you very much. 5 days. So 25 divided by 5 is 5. Let me ask you a question. Will you be able to complete in 1 day? Will you be able to complete this project in 1 day? The customer says, I need it in 1 day. No, I need tomorrow. Will you be able to do that? What is that? Technical in paper. Okay. So will you be able to do that?
There are only some kind of sequential things that will be happening. So many of the people will find some blocks.
Okay. Okay. So there is a limit beyond which you cannot compress. Right? That's what you see. Even if you consider all the sequential activities, if you keep on adding people, there is a limit beyond which you cannot compress. There's a limit beyond which you cannot compress any project. You consider all the sequential activities, no problem. Even after doing that, suppose you find that sequential activities, the critical path takes only so many days. And if you want to reduce beyond that, that is not possible. So there is a limit beyond which you cannot compress. So that is what is shown in this graph. So this is, suppose you estimate, this is the total effort. And based on that, you have calculated the development time. So this is the time. Now, you have to reduce the development time. What is going to happen is you will add people, right? Naturally, you need to add more people. When you add more people, what is going to happen, which we discussed just before? Productivity is going to come down again. So in order to reduce this development time, you need to increase the team size. When you increase the team size, productivity of the team is going to again reduce exponentially. That means total effort will increase exponentially. So total effort, this is the line which says total effort. If you want to reduce the time, it is going to increase the effort and cost. And it will reach a point where it becomes vertical, infinite. Where it becomes infinity, right? Beyond which you will not be able to compress. So it is about 75% of this TO. That's what you can compress maximum, right? Beyond which you will not be able to compress. This is called impossible region. Impossible region. And if you give more time, suppose if you give more time, what is going to happen is, the effort will initially, there is a point where effort will be the least, cost will be the least, but the time taken will be little more higher. So customers will always prefer to have the project early. So they will agree for this effort, which is not that different from this point. So this is the lowest cost point. And time is very, very different. Time is big. There is a big difference in the time frame, T0 and T1, this much difference. But the cost difference is only this much. So they may agree for a cost difference of this much for reducing the schedule to T0. So this will be the schedule they will be agreeing, and they will be paying a little more money for that. But the lowest figure will be here, somewhere here. But if you Increase, if you give more time for the team, more than this, again, the Parkinson's law works. We talked about Parkinson's law, right? So if you give more time than this, what is going to happen is they will take their own time to complete the work based on the time available, and the productivity naturally again comes down. So you can see the curve again increases exponentially. If you give more time, again the productivity reduces and the total effort and the cost increases. So this is called Putnam-Norton-Rayleigh curve or PNR curve, right? So when you calculate a schedule, nominal schedule, and tell the customer that it is going to take this much time, and if they say that we don't have that much time to wait, and you need to reduce the time to say half of what you said, you need to remember that the cost is going to increase. You have already quoted and the time. You quoted the total price and the time. Now he comes back, requirements remain same, cost you have already agreed, and now he comes back and tells you need to compress the schedule. So when you compress the schedule, what is going to happen is cost is going to increase. So you need to negotiate with the customer again and say if you want to reduce the schedule, it is going to increase the cost. That's what it means. Any questions? As of now, any questions? Any questions? Okay, I assume that there is no question. If you have any question, you can put in the chat box also. We'll check that. So I'm going to COCOMO. Action point, I will come back and just cover the initial high level if time permits. It is there the slide, I will share the slide also. Another point I want to tell is once you know the size in function points, there are a lot of thumb rules. Industry uses a lot of thumb rules. So once you know the function point, size in function point, the schedule in calendar months, you can immediately calculate using this thumb rule formula, FP raised to 0.4. And you can also calculate the number of test cases required for testing that system. Because size is based on the requirements, right? So you can also calculate the number of test cases. It will be FP raised to 1.2. And total number of acceptance test cases. And total number of test cases, including unit testing, integration testing, all that, it will be FP multiplied by 4. So if we have a 200 function point, there will be 800 test cases. And average number of development staff required will be FP divided by 150. Optimal figure. This is the optimal figure. And the maintenance staff required will be 1/3 of that. All right. So I'm going to COCOMO 2.0. Which is in your syllabus. Yes. As I said, it is based on the initial version COCOMO 81. It was developed at the University of Southern California. It was released in 1997. Barry Baum is the person who developed this in IBM. And motivation for a initial COCOMO 81 was developed at IBM, Barry Baum. And motivation for a new model is there were a lot of new generation languages coming up. Because of that, they revised this, considering all the aspects of the new generation languages. And reuse of software was also becoming popular. Component-based software development, reusable component-based software development was also happening. So they have considered the reuse of components to recalculate the effort. All that is suggested based on reuse. process maturity initiatives. So based on the process maturity level of the organization, like CMMI level 3 or level 5, again, the effort will vary. So that also is considered. And this is required for all the software development models, like new development approaches have come. So it is all based on it, that all is considered while estimating the effort. We will see various factors used in this, which will consider whatever we discussed right now. So the basic equation, that's a basic equation in COCOMO 2.0. The basic equation is person months, PM, this is effort in person months. Effort in person months, nominal value will be A into size raised to B. A into size raised to B. The PM nominal is the person months effort required for the project. A is a constant representing the productivity of the team, average productivity of the team. That is A. And B is a exponent. It depends on various productivity affecting factors, which is called economics and diseconomics of scale. So as the size increases, productivity reduces, right? For example, as I said. So you need to adjust this effort figure based on the scaling factors. If the scaling of various factors, you need to adjust this B, that is the exponent. S is the size, size is the size in function point or lines of code. That is what the basic formula is. Now we will see what is A and B in detail. A is the organizational average productivity of the team based on the same size measure. If you are using size measure in lines of code, productivity should also be based on lines of code. If you are using size in function point, the A should also be based on function points per day. If size is in lines of code, this will be number of days per, it should be the other way, person days per line, per 1,000 lines of code, for example, or per 1 kilo lines of code. Suppose you are using size in kilo lines of code, A should be, the unit of A should be number of person months per kilo lines of code. Size in kilo lines of code. So you will get person months. A will be person months by 1 kilo lines of code, and size is in total kilo lines of code. Similarly, if you are using size in function point, A should be number of person months per function point. Number of person months per function point. That should be the unit of A in that case. Now we will talk about B. What is B? B is based on these 5 productivity affecting factors. Productivity affecting factors, that is precedentness. Precedent means whether the company has previous experience of doing the same type of project. Whether the team has previous experience of doing the same type of project. That is what is PREC. And development flexibility and architecture resolution, architecture of the system and the risk resolution. Then team cohesion, team size and the collaboration between the team, process maturity. So all these factors are considered for calculating B. And all these factors we will be scoring in a scale of 0 to 5. 0 means the factor will not affect the productivity. 5 indicate the factor is going to severely affect the productivity of the team. So you'll be scoring these 5 in a scale of 0 to 5, and you will calculate B. 0 means factor will not hinder the productivity. 5 means factor will severely hinder the productivity. And these are the guidelines for each of the 5 parameters. Based on these guidelines, you can score between 0 and 5. 0 and 5. Now, we'll see the formula for B. B will be 1.01 plus 0.01 into sum of the scores of all these 5 factors. So we have scored from a scale of 0 to 5. So put that scores here. Plus into 0.01 plus 1.01. Right? So if you put 0, that is none of this factor is going to influence productivity. you will put 0 for all, right? So the B will be 1.01. And if you think that all these are going to have a major influence in the effort of your project, you'll be putting 5. The total will be 25.25. So the B will be 1.01 plus 0.25, that is 1.26. So the B will vary between 1.01 and 1.26. So based on the influence of this factor, effort will increase exponentially with this exponent, 1.26. If this factor is not going to have an impact, effort is going to increase most of nearly linear. When B becomes 1, it is pure linear. So here it is, even if everything is 0, it is 1.01. Not still, it is not linear. It is going to have an increase based on the size. So this is size raised to B, right? So still, even if this factor doesn't have any influence, still effort will be exponential with respect to size. That's what 1.01 indicates. If these factors are going to have a major influence, exponent is going to be bigger, 1.26. So that is the formula. So once you, now you know, right? So how to calculate the PM, how to calculate the person months in nominal, person months nominal size. So you know the productivity of the team, average productivity in number of function points and number of person months per function point, multiplied by size in function point, raised to B. B will be 1.01 or 1.26 or be in between based on those 5 factors. So that will be your total PM nominal. Now it is not over. So that is the normal initial calculation. Now there are a lot of other factors which is going to have an influence in the effort. As Deepu said, there are many factors, right? Experience of the team. So here experience of the team is not considered. Team cohesion is considered. Process maturity is considered. Risk is considered. Development flexibility, architecture, previous experience, all that is considered, right? But skill set in the particular language, what is the programmer productivity, what is the PL or the team lead's skill, all these are not considered, which are all going to have an influence. So that is, so the PM nominal will be adjusted based on other productivity affecting factors, which are called cost drivers. So based on the various cost drivers, there are 17 cost drivers, which we are going to see. Based on that, you will calculate a figure called cost driver multiplier, which is a scoring multiplication of scores of all the 17 factors. This is the multiplier 1, multiplier 2, multiplier 17. For each of the 17 factors, you will again score these factors, and it is the multiplication of, it is not scored in a scale of 0 to 5. It is scored in using a table. We will see that table. We will take figures from those tables and multiply those figures. That will be the CDM. So the PM adjusted based on the cost drivers would be PM nominal, which you calculated using the formula, multiplied by CDM. Right. So these are the 17 cost drivers, productivity affecting factors. Required software reliability, database size, software product complexity, required reusability of the software components, documentation matched to lifecycle needs, then execution time constraints, main storage constraint, platform volatility, analyst capability, programmer capability, personal continuity, that is attrition, application experience, platform experience, language and tool experience, use of software tools, multi-site and single-site application of the software, communication technology used. So all these will have an influence on the productivity of the team, not productivity, total effort and the team, productivity of the entire team. So you need to adjust the total effort based on these cost drivers. Now we will see how to get this cost driver multiplier for each of these 17. So these are the guidelines on how to, these are guidelines on each of the cost drivers. And this will be scored in a qualitative scale. Qualitative scale in the sense it will be scored from a scale of very low to extra high. Very low, low, nominal, high, very high, or extra high. That's how you are going to score this 17 parameters. So there is a table. I will show you that. This is the table. So you have this 17 here, and for each of this, very low, low, nominal, high, very high, and extra high. There are figures given under each column for each of these parameters. So if you assume that with the help of your team, you need to decide whether the reliability required is very low or nominal or very high or high. That you need to decide by taking input from your team. Suppose you decided reliability required is nominal. So you can use figure 1. Suppose your team decides reliability required is very high. So you will take this figure 1.4. Similarly, database size you can calculate. And if you think that it is low, database size is low, you will take 0.94. So similarly, for all these factors, you need to take the figure which is given by this table. This is fixed, static table. You cannot change these figures. You take this figure from for each of these 17 parameters, and calculate CDM. CDM is just a multiplication of all those numbers, and then multiply the PM nominal with the CDM. You get the PM adjusted. Here. Now there is one more step. Now we are going to calculate the calendar days, the schedule for the project. It is called time of development nominal. The formula will be 3 into the PM adjusted you got in the previous formula, you got the PM adjusted, right? So this, whatever you got here, PM adjusted, by multiplying the original PM nominal based on that A into size raised to B, multiplied by CDM, you get PM adjusted. So use that figure in the third equation to calculate development schedule. Development time, which is equal to 3 into person months raised to 0.33 plus 0.2 into B minus 1.01. That is the formula. B already you know. In the first equation you have calculated B. So that same B, so it is the difference. Initial minimum value of B is 1.01, and you can see you have seen maximum value is 1.26. So you take the difference between B and 1.01 multiplied by 0.2 plus 0.33 will be the exponent here, and person months will be the figure here. You need to substitute. So that will give you total development time for the project, schedule for the project. And the last, now you tell the customer it is going to take this much person months, and this is the development schedule required. This is the time required to complete it. And now customer comes back and say there is a schedule constraint. You need to give it in half the time, for example, right? Half time or 75% time. Now what you need to, now you know that the cost or the person month is going to increase. If you compress the schedule, the person month effort is going to increase. That's what the graph shows. So you need to recalculate the person month based on the schedule constraint. And there are formula for that. So you calculate a figure called required development schedule divided by expected duration, divided by nominal duration. So this is the expected duration by the customer divided by whatever duration you have calculated based on the previous formula. You will get a fraction. Either you will get 1 or less than that normally. And if you have more time, if the customer says we don't want, we can wait, no problem. You take, instead of 2 months, you take 3 months. It will be 3 divided by 2, 1.5, right? And if customer says you have given 4 months, customer says you need to deliver in 3 months, it will be 3 divided by 4, 75%. So if figure is 75%, you need to multiply the original person months into 1.23. If this figure is 85%, multiply it with 1.08. If it is same, multiply with 1, there is no change. If it is more, still, as you have seen in the curve, if you give more time, the effort is again increasing, right? You can see 1.04 multiplied by PM if this is more than 100%, 130%. If it is again more, this multiplication factor is still higher, 1.1 into PM. So this is how COCOMO 2.0 works. So there are examples here. Suppose the project size is 800 function point. So initial calculation is person month and nominal will be A into size raised to B. That is the equation 1. So nominal productivity A is given as 0.03 function point per man month, per person month. That is the number of person month, 0.03 person months per function point. That is the nominal productivity. So B is computed based on these 5 figures, which is scored in a scale of 0 to 5. So this is given 1, this is given 0, this is given 3, this is given 0, this is 4. So the B is equal to 1.01 into 1.01 plus 0.01 into sum of all these. 1 plus 0 plus 3 plus 0 plus 4, 8. So 1.01 plus 0.08, 1.09. So the person months total will be 0.03, that is A, multiplied by 800 raised to 1.09. That is 43.8 person months it is going to take. 43.8 person months. Now the second equation. So these are the cost driver multipliers. So we have taken the figures based on the team's input. You have taken the figures from that table. These are the figures. Now multiply all these figures, all the 17 figures, you get 1.09. So the total adjusted person month will be PM nominal into multiplier, that is 43.8 multiplied by 1.09, which is 47.9 person months. That's the total effort required. Now we can apply the third formula to calculate the development schedule. 3 into 47.9 raised to 0.33 plus 0.2 into B. B we have already calculated here. B we have already calculated here, 1.09. So the B minus 1.01. So 1.09 minus 1.01 is 0.08. So that is 0.16, 0.49, right? So 3.0 into 47.9 raised to 0.49, which will be equal to 11 calendar months. 11 calendar months it is going to take to complete the project. Assume that customer wants the project to be delivered in 9 months. So you calculate SCED, that is 9 divided by 11, which is equal to 81. So you take the nearest one. So from the last formula, you got 81, right? You take the nearest one, that is 85. So multiply it with 1.08. Multiply it with 1.08. So 1.08 into 47.9 was the original. 47.9 was the original person months. Multiply that with 1.08. So 51.7 person months it is going to take to complete the project in 9 months, right? Any questions as of now? Any questions? Yeah, there is a question in the chat box. Estimation is primarily depending on the estimated lines of code, which is impossible to predict precisely. How is it managed in the industry? That's what I told you in the beginning. LOC is the actual size, physical size measure, which you can count only after completing coding, right? So that cannot be used for proposals. That cannot be used for proposals because we don't have that figure. So what people do, because of that, we have other logical size measures like function point. This is one of the traditional approach, function point. So you calculate the function point and use COCOMO. COCOMO takes size in function point. I use COCOMO to convert the size in function point to effort using the formula what we have discussed just now. That's how the industry does that. But for your question, there is another thing. There are conversion figures available in the industry. If you Google, you will get function point versus lines of code. Table is there. Table you will get for various languages. So Java, one function point is equal to so many lines of code. C++, one function point is equal to so many lines of code. And Visual Basic, one function point is equal to so many lines of code. That table is available in the industry. If you search Google, I have that table, I can share that as well. So from the table, you can even convert function point. Once you have the size in function point, you can multiply that with the conversion figure to get the total lines of code. That is also possible. So you can predict total line of code in the beginning also, if you have the size in function point. So these conversion figures are given by various companies, but you need to be very careful to use that, because that is given based on research done in some companies like IBM, and their productivity could be slightly different, right? So you can take only, you can consider that conversion only as approximate, not exactly accurate, right? So there will be little bit variations to use that figure and convert size in function point to lines of code. You will get approximate figure, that's it. But actual figure will, actual lines of code may be slightly varying. Did I answer your question? Any other question? Any other question? Any other question? So I believe the COCOMO 2.0 is clear for everyone. This is given in detail in Ian Sommerville, exact formulas. There is no difference. I have been doing the training, it's the same. This is my training slide. So this is what is included in the syllabus in detail. Function point is not that covered in this current syllabus. We have just mentioned the lines of code and function point, that's all. So this is what is important for you to teach. So it looks very complex, but if you just go through once again, it will be very clear. There is no problem. There are three formulas, that's it. Question 1 will calculate the PM. Then you multiply it with the CDM, cost driver multiplier. That's the second formula to convert or adjust the PM to considering other cost drivers. Then third formula will calculate the schedule. And if there is a schedule constraint, you will apply the other formula, the last one, fourth formula. Okay, I assume that there are no questions. So I'm going to pricing. Cost estimation. Now you know what's the effort in person months. So that has to be converted into price or cost of the software in Indian rupee or US dollar. And then you quote the price to the customer. That's what you need to do. So using the previous formula, you got only effort in person months. How long it is going to take for one person to complete. That is what we got. Now you need to multiply that figure with the rate of the employee to calculate the cost. And then add profit to that to quote the price. That's what you need to do, right? And one more thing you need to consider is, so these are the various factors, but when you calculate the cost, it is not only the programmer cost you need to consider. There are a lot of other costs in software industry. So you need to consider various cost factors before you can come up with the actual cost of the project. So what are the factors to be considered while estimating the software development cost? Direct labor cost, that is salary of employees directly involved in the project. Programmers, analysts, project manager, project leader, team leader, all those salary has to be considered. That is the direct labor cost. Then if you have any consultant or subcontracted employees, their salary also has to be, their cost also has to be considered. That is indirect labor cost. And then there are a lot of overhead costs in the company. like electricity charges, water charges, telecommunication charges, rent of the office building, salary of management staff who is not directly involved in the project. That also has to come from project, right? Salary of CEO, salary of the support staff, administrative staff, account staff, they are not directly involved. So here in the first item, we have considered only the salary of people directly involved in the project. But there are a lot of people who are required in the organization to sustain the business, like CEO, CTO, administrative managers, HR managers, accounts managers, then electricity charge, water charge, communication charge, rent of the office building, interest paid to the bank for loans taken. All these are overhead costs. That also has to come from projects. So a portion of this overhead cost also to be added to every project. A portion of this overhead cost also to be added to every project. So we need to consider that. Then suppose you want to buy some hardware, software or tools for the present project, that has to be added. And there will be other costs like travel. Suppose one of the engineer has to go on site for installing the application. So the travel cost of all its accommodation, travel, airfare, DA, all this has to be considered. Then if there is any training to be given to the employees, that training cost has to be added, telecommunication cost, and GST plus GST, whatever, right? That has to be added. So this is how you calculate. If there is any tax to be added, that has to be added. So total cost would be labor cost plus overhead cost, portion of the overhead cost plus CapEx plus other costs. This is how the cost is estimated. Plus you will add a percentage of the margin, percentage as the margin. Suppose this is the total cost. So you will add say 50%, 50% as your profit. This is the actual cost. So business is running for profit, right? So you need to add plus maybe 50% or 30%. What normally people do is like, companies do is like they add 50% margin. That means they will double this. 50% margin means the price quoted will be double of this. Suppose you say $100,000, you get $100,000 as the total cost. So to the customer, they will be quoting 200,000. So in the 200,000, 50% is the margin. 50% is the profit, right? Only 50% is the actual cost, so 50% is the margin. So you will just double it and quote the price. So what happens is customer will start negotiating. Customer will start negotiating. So you will probably come down to 30%. You will reduce this margin, profit margin. When the negotiation happens, you will reduce this margin from 50% to 30% or 20% or even 10%, all that, right? That's what happens. Right. And one more thing I want to tell you is like, so all these are very easy. Direct labor cost, you know the salary of employees, all that. The indirect labor cost, that also you know. Overhead cost, that is the problem. That is a problem. So overhead cost, every month, company will be spending some amount as overhead cost, right? So that normally the project manager who is going to do the estimation may not know that figure. What is the salary of CEO? What is the salary of CTO? What is the rent of the building? All these may not be aware to the project manager who is doing this costing, and that is also a confidential figure that nobody will know in the organization. What is the salary of CTO and CEO and other people, right? That cannot be disclosed to other people. So the project manager who is doing this costing has to take a portion of that while costing the project, right? So there's a technique called full-time equivalent. These accounts people, what they do is, they will know this. They know this figure, total figure, what is the monthly overhead of the company. So what they do is, this monthly overhead of the company will be apportioned to the salaries of each category of people who is working in the project. So software engineer, they know this is the total monthly cost of software engineer. And senior software engineer, this is the total monthly cost. Project manager, this is the total monthly cost. They know that, right? And they know the overhead cost also. So this overhead total cost will be apportioned in the same proportion of the salary of each category of people. That is like, suppose salary of yes. This is how it is done. So this is the overhead cost. Salary of software engineer, suppose it is A, total is A. So they will add this proportion. Salary of software engineer is X1. So senior software engineer is X2, BA is X3, PM is X4, and training is X5. So what they do is an overhead cost is O. So they will convert this X1 to A is equal to X1 plus their apportion this O in the same scale of X1. O into X1 divided by sum of all these. And here X2, B will be X2 plus O into X2 divided by sum of all these. And C is equal to X3 plus O into X3 divided by sum of all these. X4 is equal to O into X4 divided by sum of all these. And trainee salary will be X5 plus O into X5 divided by 6. So this is the actual salary. To that, they will also add the apportioned overhead cost. So this will be known to, this total will be known to the PMs. Total including overhead will be given to the PMs, and they will be using that for calculating the cost, overhead cost. Overhead cost will be done like that. So it will be, so this you need not add separately. When you get the salary, whatever the PMs know, will include overhead also. It will not be the actual salary. It will be more than that, including overhead apportioned cost. So they will add this, and then all the other costs, they know actuals. They'll be adding actuals. Along with that, they will also add the profit margin, 50% or 30% or 20% or 10%, whatever. Then they will get the price of the software. Any questions? Any questions? Is it clear? Yeah, it is. It has to be charged. It will be automatically charged because it is added to the cost of each engineer. The total monthly overhead cost is apportioned and added to the cost of each engineer. So you need to just take the engineer cost, including the overhead cost apportion. That's it. So it will be applicable for all projects. No, it is not. It's not like that. They will not get 10 times. It is apportioned, right? So suppose you know it's total 1 month salary of software engineer is this much, and 1 month overhead cost total is this much, and 1 month salary of SSC is this much, PM is this much. So this one overhead cost will be apportioned to the salary of each of the category of employees. Then for each, and all these people are going to work in different projects. So that will be automatically captured from the customer. One person is going to work only for one project, right? And so this overhead cost will be coming from that customer. Then also it is correct. And this monthly salary will be divided by 25 into 8 to get the hourly rate, and hourly rate will be used. Even if one person is working in multiple projects, one project 4 hours, another project 4 hours, and from one customer you will charge only 4 hours cost. So one monthly cost including overhead will be divided by normally 25 into 8. 25 into 8 means 25 working days. So if you divide by 25, you will get 1 day salary. Divide by 8, you will get 1 hour salary, including overhead. So it is hourly rate actually used for calculating. So you know how many hours total, and multiply by the hourly rate. So even if one person is working for multiple projects, actual hours spent for each project will be considered. Did I answer your question, Sumesh? Actual hours spent by a person for a project only will be used for costing. that customer. If one person is working only in one project and he is not being utilized fully, but still only the hours utilized for the project will be taken and multiplied with hourly rate. The bench, people will be on bench, right? They will not get any money from the customer. And the benching, if the bench amount is very high every month, that also will be added to the overhead. So naturally, it will be apportioned to all the other employees. There will be people on bench, right? So if company doesn't have that many bench people, it may be ignored. But if it is a common practice and every month there are a lot of money spent for people on bench, that will also be added as overhead cost, which will automatically get apportioned to the people who are working in the project. Any other question? Any other question? Okay. No question. So I will just quickly So I'll just quickly go to function point and just give you some idea about what is function point. Yes. Can you see the slide? Slide number 11. Slide number 11. Okay. So there are a lot of techniques which is given in this slide. Out of which popular ones are function point analysis and use case point and story point. Story point we have discussed. So COCOMO we have already discussed. Function point and use case point, that is another two techniques which is popular. And story point is normally used in Agile. Story point is normally used in Agile. So the function point works like this. So as I said in the beginning, the function point, every software estimation techniques works in the approach, divide and conquer approach. So you divide the application into pieces and you estimate each piece and then add together. That's what happens. So in the case of function point, it divides the application into 5 parts. Out of that, 2 parts is data. So you divide the application into data and transaction. That's the first division. And the data is further divided into 2, internal data and external data. And transaction is divided into 3 types of transactions. That is input transaction, output transaction, and query transactions. There are specific names given for internal data, that is called ILF. In function point, internal data is termed as ILF, internal logical file. External data is termed as external interface file or EIF. Input transactions are called as external input. Output transactions are called as external outputs. And query transactions are called as external queries, EQ, EI, EO, EQ, ILF, and EIF. So these are the 5 components of function point. So once you get a requirement document, you need to go through that requirement document and identify all these 5 components. What are the internal data? What are the external data you need? What are the input transactions you have? What are the query transactions you have? What are the output transactions you have? So all these you need to identify and list out. Internal, what is meant by internal data? So when you develop an application, you will be maintaining a lot of data internally within the application. That is called internal data. External data, your application may also need some data which has to come from another system outside your application boundary. You may be fetching some exchange rate information, for example, which you don't maintain internally in your system, which has to come from a banking system externally. So if you need such data from outside for your application, that is treated as external data. Now, what are the transactions CA, EO, and EQ? If we look at the banking application or the enterprise application, business application, database application, you'll see that there are a lot of functionality which are common type of transactions. Like there'll be a screen, suppose you want to add customer data. You want to add customer data, customer details, which you have seen in the beginning. So that is called input transactions. So we'll get input from the user, and that input data will be saved in an internal data file or internal database table. That type of transactions are called EA transactions. Then in a typical business application, you will have search functionality. You give some data, and system will search based on that input and give the result. For example, suppose you want to search for the employee details of a particular employee. You will go to the search functionality and you will enter the employee ID, and system will fetch the details of that employee with the employee ID and display that detail. That is called query transactions. Query. Now, in a system, typical system, there are a lot of reports. That is another type of transaction. Reports. Reports will have a lot of fields which are calculated by taking data from the internal database. So those type of reports are normally treated as external output. So you go to the requirement document, identify all these 5 types of transactions. There will be many. There will be many input internal data, there will be many external data, there will be many input transactions, there will be many query transactions, there will be many external output transactions. We list all of them one by one, right? And that's the first step. After listing out all these 5 components, next is, even suppose you have 2 same type of transaction, EA and EA, 2 EA transactions. One is adding the customer details. So adding the customer details, suppose add the student details. How many fields will be there in the student detail? Probably 20 fields. Assume it is 20 fields. You need to enter all the 20 fields. When you press the submit button, all these 20 fields will be saved to a database table. Input transactions. Consider another input transaction, add department. Add the department detail. How many fields could be there? Maybe a department code and department name and head of the department. That's it. Nothing else. 3 fields. And you enter these 3 fields, press save button. These 3 data will be saved in a database table. The complexity of add department detail functionality and complexity of add student detail functionality, is it same? Definitely it is not same, right? One is having only 3 fields, other one is having 20 fields. Complexity is different. So the effort or the size of the software depends on the complexity also. So after listing out all these, you need to decide what is the complexity of each of these. Whether it is low complex, average complex, or high complex. These are the 3 categories. For each of these input data, internal data, external data, input transaction, output transaction, and query transactions, after listing out, you need to decide the complexity, whether it is low, average, or high. After you do this, there is a table. There is a table given by function point. For internal logical file, if your complexity is low, function point is 7. If it is average, it is 10. If it is high, it is 15. The external interface file, EIF, if it is low, 5, average 7, high is 10. External input transactions, low is 3, average 4, and high is 6. External output 4, 5, 7. External query 3, 4, 6. You put these numbers from the table. You cannot change this number. You take these numbers from this table, put against each of this list of items. Based on the complexity, you put these figures from this table and then add all these figures, right? That is your total function point. That is your total function point. And this is considering only the functional requirements. So we have considered only the functional requirements. But in a software, as you know, there are a lot of non-functional requirements also, which is applicable for all the functionality. So the effort will also depend on the non-functional requirement. So the function point you get by adding all these is normally called unadjusted function point or UFP, which has to be adjusted considering all the non-functional requirements. So this is how it is done. There is something called general system characteristics. For adjusting the function point based on the non-functional requirements. So these are the 14 general system characteristics: data communication, distributed processing, performance, every use configuration, all these 14. You need to rate each of these in a scale of 0, 5. 0 means there is no influence of for this factor. 5 means there is a lot of data communication, then 5. If there is no data communication with external systems, 0. Is it a distributed processing system? Yes or no? If it is not a distributed batch processing, not a distributed system, 0. 1 to 5 based on how much distribution happens in the processes. Put all these numbers, add all these numbers, that is called TDI. So TDI will be 0 between 0 and 70. If you give all 5, it will be 14 into 5, 70. If you give all 0, it will be 0. So TDI will be between 0 and 70. And you calculate a value called value adjustment factor, that is 0.65 plus this TDI, total of this, into 0.01. So the VAF will vary. So TDI will vary between 0 and 70. So the VAF will vary between 0.65 and 1.35. This is 70 into 0.01, 0.7, 0.7 plus 0.65, 1.35. So the VAF will vary between 0.65 and 1.35. So multiply the UFP, which you got by adding all the numbers, that is called unadjusted function point. Multiply the unadjusted function point with this value adjustment factor, that will be your final function point. So the unadjusted function point will vary between plus or minus 35%. It will be either 0.65 multiplied by UFP or 1.35 multiplied by UFP, that is the maximum value. So the value, the final function point will vary between plus or minus 35% of unadjusted function point. That will be your function point. Got it? Any questions? Any questions on any topic? COCOMO or function point? Function point details are there in the slide. You can go through that. Any questions? Afternoon we'll start at 1:30, and first I will cover configuration management.
Okay, sir.
And after that, risk management was yesterday I was rushing through risk management. So I will, if time permits, I will talk on risk management a little more, which is not covered yesterday.
Sir. So we will continue at 1:30. Okay, sir.
1:30, yes.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Today morning session was from 9 to 11, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll resume at 1:30. 1:30 we'll start with configuration management, then risk management, which were not covered yesterday.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you all. See you at 1:30.